We have losers. We have losers.
I supported him. He lost. He let us down. But, you know, he lost. So I never liked him as much after that because I don't like losers.
You have a loser, like the guy's a stone cold loser, has been all his life, Adam Schiff.
You know, when I watch a George Will or a Charles Krauthammer, you know, I watched them for years. They're losers. They're just losers.
Well, Rosie's a loser. She's always been a loser.
She suffers from a thing called loser's remorse. She lost.
What a group of losers we have. We have a bunch of losers. They're losers. They're babies. We have a president. All he wants to do is campaign.
I will call them from now on losers because that's what they are. They're losers. And we'll have more of them. But they're losers. Just remember that.
Same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser.
Anthony Weiner is a proven loser. I mean, the poor guy,
These are losers from day one. Guys like Bill Kristol. He's 0-32. George Conway, you take a look at him. Just take a look at that guy. The man's a stone-cold loser. Mitt is a failed candidate. He failed.
But Bernie Sanders, excuse me, you know, again, he's the greatest loser I've ever seen. This guy can lose and be so happy.
Hillary Clinton said, I don't like his tone. See, I don't like her temperament because her temperament is the temperament of a loser. Well, I heard Biden, who's a loser. I mean, look, Joe never got more than 1%.
The way he talked about our veterans as being losers. My son, he was no loser. Trump's a loser.
Yes, Trump is a loser. Welcome to the Daily Faded. This is where we get faded daily and talk about politics and news
President
of the
Trump's
day.
refusal to concede an election he clearly lost is creating a dangerous precedent.
I don't know what just happened. Anyway, that was David Pakman show. Put together that little piece of loserness. Boy, Trump's been talking about himself all this time that he's been talking about losers. How do you like them apples? So we have frauds pushing ballot fraud in this country right now. Talk about that a little bit tonight. And as usual, let's start off with coronavirus because it's not going well. So here we have nCoV Live. 52 million confirmed cases plus around the world. 52 million cases around the world. 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million deaths from COVID-19. The US is now up to 10.7 million. $10.7 million cases and 247,000 deaths, each one of them a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, an uncle, an aunt. I don't say aunt, I say aunt. That's a lot of Americans who died. The enormity of it, you know, when something's so massive, it's easier to be detached from it. But we have 1,000 people dying a day from COVID-19 right now. And that's like 2 jumbo airliners dropping out of the sky every day. If 2 airplanes were dropping out of the sky every day since April, late March, April, sometime in April. I would think we would do something about it. We'll look at California real quick. I got to this a little bit late tonight, so I didn't get the changes today, but I have the totals. California is now up to 996,000 total cases, just a little bit behind Texas. And we're at 18,107 lives lost in California to COVID-19. Here's the COVID tracking project daily update. States reported 1.4 million new tests and 144,000 cases. Another all-time high. 65,400 people are hospitalized, 15,000 more than on election day. 8 days, 15,000 more people in 8 days. The death toll today was 1,421, pushing the 7-day average over 1,000. Now, this death toll of 1,421 is still reflective of where we were at a minimum 2 weeks ago, but more like 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? So 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were down here. Yeah, that's October 1 is right there. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were down here. So the death toll that responds to 65,000 hospitalizations, the number of dead that we get from 65,000 hospitalizations, this is about to get, I mean, it's a grotesque horror what this country is going through right now. And one thing I can say good about Joe Biden is that I do believe he has the gift of empathy, and or if not, he fakes it really well. And we need that right now. We need someone to lead us through the morning for the hundreds of thousands of Americans who have perished. Here's another chart that is a must-see. So this shows the 3 uptrends of the US pandemic from trough to peak. You could see here the March to April surge, which at the time we were terrified of and think the worst we were going to go through, right? And then the pink line is June to July. Notice with both of these, the peak is someplace around 38 to 44 days, someplace in there. But our current trajectory, the blue one, 38 to 44 days, hold my beer, and accelerating. So, you know, New York Times, the surging coronavirus finds a federal leadership vacuum. The winter wave has been anticipated for months. Now that it's here, health officials worry once again about strategy and supplies. When senior Food and Drug Administration officials held their morning call one day this week, they received a sobering warning from the agency's chief, Dr. Stephen M. Hahn, who had just gotten off the plane with the White House. Block out all the craziness afoot. Stay focused on fighting the pandemic, he said. There are plenty of distractions. President Trump is pushing to overturn the results of the election, and his only public statements about the coronavirus in the last few days were to make clear his peak that good news about a vaccine had not come until after Election Day, even as the average number of new daily infections topped 123,000, average daily deaths shot past the 1,000 mark, and COVID-19 hospitalizations hit a record high of 65,368 on Wednesday. Vice President Mike Pence canceled a vacation at the last minute as the virus numbers grew worse, but the White House coronavirus task force that he leads has been all but publicly silent. Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff who is infected with the virus, declared last month, "We are not going to control the pandemic," and said the focus should instead be on the longer-term goals of developing vaccines and treatments. This is what the herd immunity strategy looks like. These numbers, this curve, this delta, this is what the herd immunity strategy looks like. This is what not controlling the pandemic looks like. This is what letting people just catch it. And then we'll develop magical herd immunity. Ooh. After 70% of the population has gotten it and 3, 4, 5 million people have died. Maybe not that many, but at least 1 million or 2. Since then, the White House political director Brian Jack and 2 other White House aides have become the latest administration officials to test positive for the virus. People familiar with the diagnosis said on Wednesday, the White House is in the midst of its second outbreak. Oh my God, these people are such idiots. They are such idiots. Oh. The pandemic caught the nation flat-footed in March, but epidemiologists have been warning for months of a fall and winter wave as people are driven indoors, schools resume in-person classes, and Americans grow tired of months of precautions. We knew this was coming. We knew it was coming. And I mean, look, the reality is that Trump's fucking line about COVID-19, that it's not a big deal, that you will get better, that it's going to be fine, and we got to keep everything open, and that it's just going to go away. That it's just going to go away. Oh, and there's going to be a vaccine. Everything's going to be fine. We got therapeutics. Everything's going to be fine. When we needed to be warning people about how bad this was going to get. We needed to be setting up systems so that we would be prepared for this because we knew it was going to happen. There's a reason why we have epidemiologists, right? Infectious disease experts, public health experts, because they know how this shit works, because that's how science works. All right, I'll shut up. The pandemic caught the nation flat-footed in March, but epidemiologists have been warning for months of a fall and winter wave as people are driven indoors, schools resume in-person classes, and Americans grow tired of months of precautions. Yet shortages of personal protective equipment are back, especially among rural hospitals, nursing homes, and private medical practices that lack access to the supply networks that serve larger hospital chains. The Strategic National Stockpile, the nation's emergency reserve, has only 115 million N95 masks, far short of the 300 million the administration had hoped to amass by winter, Rear Admiral John Polachek, who retired on Monday as the National Supply Chain Commander, said in a recent interview, though he added that the government is continuing to expand its supplies of protective gear. Dr. Shikha Gupta, the executive director of Get Us PPE, a volunteer effort that matches available supplies to healthcare providers, said 70% of those requesting help from the organization last month reported being completely out of some gear, especially masks, gloves, and disinfecting wipes. Healthcare workers are exhausted and frustrated, and it's really hard to believe that on November 10th, it feels very much like the middle of March all over again, she said. It is unbelievable that we are right back where we started. I mean, obviously it makes perfect sense because our federal government is doing nothing and has been doing nothing all along, for the most part. Cases are surging here in California. We felt like we were in pretty good shape, and we were. It seemed like we were. We had a low test positivity rate there for a few weeks, but now everything is spiking up again. Lockdown's going to get more restrictive again. I don't know what to say about the failures of the Trump administration anymore. I really don't. I don't know. We reach a point where there are no words, especially when you think about the loss of life that is involved in this failure. Let's just go and see what the IHME is predicting right now. Okay. Hold on one second. Let me just figure out how to. Compare. Hold on one second. I'm just trying to figure out how to get this. No, that's what I want to change. Okay. Hold on. I'm almost there. La-di-da. It does take forever to get to United States on an international menu of country names. So here we go. So this is measuring total deaths. This is still not what I was trying to get. I'm sorry for the delay, you guys. Anyway, I just wanted to get there. Infections and testing, maybe it's this. Nope. I have no idea what I'm looking for at this point. All right, moving on. On to voter fraud. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick offers $1 million reward for evidence of voter fraud. Every time you say voter fraud, you have to take a hit. Not really. Caitlin Collins at CNN reported today, Republican Philadelphia City Commissioner says they looked into a list claiming dead people voted. Between everything else that we're doing, we looked it up, each one of them, to see what their vote history was. Not a single one voted in Philadelphia after they died. Not a single one. So Philadelphia, the most corrupt city in America, as the Republicans would have you believe right now. Not a single dead person voted. It's really an information war that we're in, right? Because that's not on Breitbart. I mean, that's just a piece of CNN reporting, right? It's not anything special. It's not hard to get. It's not hard to figure that out. Hard for me because I'm not a reporter and I wouldn't know how to do it. David Fahrenthold, who I think is a reporter for the Washington Post, knew real Donald Trump's campaign promised shocking proof of fraud in Michigan. Instead, they provided a list of small bore complaints from GOP poll watchers about the ballot counting room in Detroit, including loud noises, mean stares, and a big man. Yeah. It's just so funny. Like these cheesy, awful lawsuits. Like, what else could it possibly be from Trump but cheesy, awful lawsuits? And they're just taking the scattershot shotgun approach, to get as many as possible and hope that one of them somehow bears fruit. They're just fishing. They're fishing. And what's remarkable is that it seems like we held such a free and fair election that they can't even find any fucking fraud. Breaking news from the Oversight Committee, Erie, Pennsylvania. United States Postal Service whistleblower completely recanted his allegations of a supervisor tampering with mail-in ballots after being questioned by investigators, according to the IG. Here are the facts. Richard Hopkins is a USPS employee in Erie, Pennsylvania. Remember, Donald Trump didn't want to go to Erie. There must be a connection. He signed a sworn affidavit with allegations of ballot tampering, fraud, and went public through Project Veritas. Project Veritas. Oh my God. USPS IG began investigating last week. IG investigators informed committee staff today that they interviewed Hopkins on Friday, but that Hopkins recanted his allegations yesterday and did not explain why he signed a false affidavit. So all of their allegations are just collapsing. Like when I try and make a cake or a loaf of bread, it collapses. It's falling apart. They're just desperately hoping that they'll find something on one of them, you know? And at the same time, putting so much bullshit out into the world that they poison the democratic process as we know it. Rand Paul tweeted, one way of determining fraud in mail-in ballots would be to examine a random sample of a few thousand to find the rate of fraud. If fraud rate is low, voters may be convinced of the election's legitimacy. If the fraud rate is high, then every mail-in ballot should be examined. And Jessica Huseman, who CNN, I think, I don't remember offhand. Oh, yes, CNN, ProPublica. This is called auditing, and election administrators do it every year. These people don't even know what they're talking about. Rand Paul imitates a smart person. He doesn't do a very good imitation of a smart person, but he's a doctor. You know, he's got curly hair. Smart people have curly hair, right? I don't have any hair. Well, at least not on the top of my head. But you probably noticed that. I'm going to skip this one because we've done enough about how bad their frauds are. Attorney General Nessel, Trump's baseless election lawsuits essentially say black people are corrupt. I'm going to read a little bit of this. Michigan's top law enforcement officer blasted legal efforts of President Donald Trump in the state on Wednesday, saying they include no evidence of misconduct, unfairly attack black voters and workers in Detroit, and will not change the outcome of the election. Attorney General Dana Nessel, a Democrat, did not mince her words in critiquing the president's multiple lawsuits filed in Michigan. She said there is no evidence to support any of the president's claims of election misconduct, or the claims are demonstrably false. Really, the themes that we see that persist are this: black people are corrupt, black people are incompetent, and black people can't be trusted. That's the narrative that is continually espoused by the Trump campaign and their allies in these lawsuits, Nessel said during a press call. Nessel noted the lawsuits focus on allegations of misconduct in Detroit, a city that typically votes for Democrats and that has a majority black population. Other places in the state that have a majority white population, where Democratic nominee Joe Biden earned a higher percentage of the vote this year than Hillary Clinton in 2016, such as Oakland and Kent counties, have not been a focus of Trump lawsuits, Nessel said, because of course they haven't. Because of course it's all about race, because Trump is a big fat racist. Now here's what scares me. Not a lot, not a lot, a little bit. This makes me worry just a little bit. And I might not be worrying about this if not for it being 2020. And anything can and will happen in 2020. This is from Axios, the Electoral College play. As the weaknesses of President Trump's legal cases to overturn Joe Biden's win become clearer, Republicans are talking more about the Electoral College, hinting at an extreme, last-chance way for Trump to cling to power. What we're watching, in this long-shot scenario, Trump and his team could try to block secretaries of state in contested states from certifying results. That could allow legislatures in those states to try to appoint new electors who favor Trump over Biden. It's basically hijacking the democracy, one lawyer familiar with the process tells Axios. They've got nothing else. You'd be trying to deny Joe Biden 270. If Trump were to pursue this course, it likely would become apparent the week leading up to Thanksgiving as states face deadlines to finalize election results. Trump has not directly said he would pursue this strategy, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo each noted on Tuesday that the election results don't become official until electors cast their votes next month. I noticed that when I saw the two of them say the things that they said yesterday. Let me continue. To date, Biden's status as president-elect is rooted in media projections based on raw vote totals reported by individual states, yada, yada. At some point here, we'll find out who finally was certified in each of these states, and the Electoral College will determine the winner, and that person will be sworn in on January 20th, Mitch McConnell said. No reason for alarm. One Senate leadership aide said McConnell was not signaling an electoral strategy and was simply noting that it's not uncommon for there to be litigation before the Electoral College results are complete. If a lawsuit successfully stops certification of results in a state, legislators there could step into the void and pick a pro-Trump slate of electors. The lawyer who requested anonymity to speak about the scenario said Trump's team now appears to be trying to throw enough dirt at the process for counting the late ballots to argue that accurate results can't be ascertained. And so it goes on. And the basic idea is throw enough shit in the way that they're not able to certify the election, and then go to a Republican legislature and have them do it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if they did that? Holy hell, this country would, after what we saw on Saturday, the way we saw people bursting into the streets to celebrate, I think you'd have a serious mass movement on your hands. But it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Look, the good news is that they are imbeciles. They're imbeciles. So the the likelihood of them being able to pull this off is slim to none. It really is. So moving right along, a little bit more to do tonight. I have a lot more to do, but only going to do a little bit of it. Ronald Klain was announced as Joe Biden's chief of staff. That is not a Senate-confirmed position, so he will get the job on day one. He tweeted, "I've seen so many kind wishes tonight on this website. Thank you, and I'm so sorry I can't reply to each of you. I'm honored by the president-elect's confidence and will give my all to lead a talented and diverse team in a Biden-Harris White House." Now, what do we know about Ronald Klain? We know that he served in both of the last two Democratic administrations. He was Al Gore's chief of staff. He was Joe Biden's chief of staff. And he was the Ebola czar when we went through the Ebola pandemic, or epidemic, I guess. That was not a pandemic. Thank God. That would be an awful disease to have as a pandemic, as a global pandemic. Ugh. People bleeding out all over the place. Oh, God. Terrifying nightmares. What was I saying? Ebola czar, Ronald Klain. He has been a lobbyist. I did see that. And at the same time, he's supposed to have a progressive side as well. So I saw some progressives who were happy about this announcement, including AOC, who tweeted her approval earlier today. Adam Classfield from Law and Crime News. President-elect Joe Biden sends readouts of calls to Prime Minister Scott Morrison of Australia, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga of Japan, and President Moon Jae-in of the Republic of Korea. So that's what creepy Uncle Joe was up to today. Kamala tweeted out, "As President, Joe Biden will make corporations and the wealthiest finally pay their fair share, and he won't ask a single person making under $400,000 per year to pay a penny more in taxes." God damn it, he better hold that. That better be true. That better be true. And Sarah Lazar, who writes for In These Times, which is a good progressive website. They do some really good reporting. I analyzed Biden's Pentagon transition team and found that 1/3 of its members work for think tanks, organizations, or companies that either directly receive money from the weapons industry or are part of the arms industry themselves. Well, I thought about getting into this article a bit, but it's enough just to know that we got people with a financial stake in continuing the military-industrial complex in the Joe Biden administration. Vosh called it anarcho-Bidenism the other day. I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, oh, you know, I was looking at the wrong window. Hey there, Spandau. Yes, fuck Rand Paul. Hopefully Trump stays on the golf course and we make it until January 20th. Do you think the GOP senators will start to distance themselves, stick with Trump, and try to hold his base until the Senate vote in Georgia? Dude, it's all about Georgia. It's all about Georgia. The Republicans are not going to say a thing. They're not going to say a thing. They're not going to contradict Trump in any way until January 5th. So nothing but more cowardice from the Republicans, because they think that they need him to win in Georgia, and they probably do need him to win in Georgia. And right now, with him, you know, barricaded into the White House, now I'm sure they're wondering if he's even competent to do any campaigning, if he's even going to be capable of it, or is his rage going to go on and on and on? And yes, of course, fuck Rand Paul for sure. However, here's the good news. Progressives are already starting to put pressure onto Joe Biden. Sunrise Movement and Justice Democrats put this out, I don't know, today, yesterday? I think it was today. Their climate mandate. We are the majority. They've given us a mandate for action on COVID, the economy, on climate change, on systemic racism. That's a quote from President-elect Joe Biden. President-elect Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump with the highest youth turnout ever. Now Joe Biden must assemble a powerful governing team to stop the climate crisis, create millions of good-paying jobs, address systemic racism, and control the COVID-19 pandemic. Joe Biden has a choice to make. Does he want to be the leader of the American majority, or does he want to be Mitch McConnell's vice president? You know, they're not shy in their approach, and I like that. A time to heal. I'm not going to read all of this because I want to get to the names. We can unite our nation by solving the crisis we have in common, COVID-19, climate change, crises we have in common, COVID-19, climate change, systemic racism, and an economic recession. Joe Biden must command the federal government with fierce urgency and bold creativity. Our next president must establish new executive offices with expansive power to respond to crises faster than Mitch McConnell. This is Biden's FDR moment. To that end, they put together the dream team for the Biden cabinet. They put it together using these criteria: no ties to fossil fuel companies or corporate lobbyists. Collectively, the cabinet should be representative of America, and the person should fight with the urgency that the climate crisis demands. So this is the climate cabinet. Secretary of the Interior, Representative Deb Haaland, U.S. House Rep from New Mexico. Representative Raul Grijalva, Justice Democrat from Arizona, and Representative Jared Huffman from California. Deb Haaland is one of the, I believe, two Native American women in Congress right now. Secretary of State, the rewards go to the peaceniks. Representative Barbara Lee from California was the only representative to vote against the war in Afghanistan and the mandate for endless war that it represented. So she had a lot of foresight. And she showed the great judgment. Now, Ro Khanna and Chris Murphy both were involved in the War Powers Act resolution to end the war in Yemen. I do hope Joe Biden ends our involvement in the war in Yemen. I'd like to see that happen, though I think the Biden administration will be almost as beholden to the Saudis as the Trump administration, because that is the way of all American administrations in the 20th and so far in the 21st century. Secretary of the Treasury, top pick, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Problem, Republican governor in Massachusetts. Sarah Bloom Raskin, Distinguished Fellow of Duke Law School's Global Financial Markets Center, and Robert Reich, Chancellor's Professor of Public Policy at the University of California at Berkeley. Any of these three would be terrific. I don't think we can take a senator who's going to be replaced by a Republican. That's a bad idea. So either of the other two is great. I'm not super familiar with Sarah Bloom Raskin. I've heard of her. Robert Reich, I think we all know Robert Reich. We remember him from the Clinton years, but he's far more progressive than the Clintons. Attorney General Keith Ellison, Minnesota Attorney General Larry Krasner, City of Philadelphia's District Attorney, and Dana Nessel, the Michigan Attorney General, who we were just reading about a moment ago. That was her words that we were quoting. Look, I think all of them are great. I love Keith Ellison. I think he's phenomenal. And I think that we would have won a whole hell of a lot more if he had been the chairman of the DNC for the last 4 years. But he was replaced by Obama's hand-picked choice, Tom Perez. So Keith Ellison would be an amazing attorney general. He's also Muslim. I think having a Muslim attorney general would be excellent, as long as, of course, qualified in every other way. Larry Krasner has been in the news a lot lately with the Walter Wallace killing in Philadelphia, and then with the ballot recount stuff. And he's a super progressive DA. And Dana Nessel seems perfectly good. I probably didn't know that name until today. We'll go through this a little bit more quickly. Chair, Council of Economic Advisors, Derek Hamilton, Stephanie Kelton, Heidi Shearholtz. The only one here I really know is Stephanie Kelton, who is an MIT economist, and I think she's a genius. Her book is next on my pile of books to read. But National Economic Council Director, top pick Joseph Stiglitz. This is one of the most progressive economists in America, maybe the most progressive economist in America. So I would love to have Stiglitz as the director of the National Economic Council. That would be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It won't happen, but this is someone who has written about income and wealth inequality, understands the dynamics at play, and genuinely goes into the data that looks at everybody and includes the people at the bottom of the income ladder. So Stiglitz would be amazing, but it's not going to be Stiglitz. That's for sure. Secretary of Labor, top pick, Senator Bernie Sanders. I don't know the other two. And sadly, Vermont also has a Republican governor right now. Bernie is jockeying for this job. He has been calling I'm a little stoned, you guys. That happens sometimes when I do this. He has been talking to union heads, union presidents, and lobbying for the job to get them to, I don't know, make a call for him. I don't know, whatever they do. He told Wolf Blitzer today that he wants the job. So again, I don't think it can happen because Republican governor of Vermont. So it just seems like a non-starter to me. And frankly, I'm not sure whether I'd rather have Bernie in the cabinet or in the Senate. He would get a hell of a lot done at the Department of Labor. I'm sure of that. So anyway, almost done with this here. EPA Administrator Kevin De Leon is from around these parts. He actually ran for Senate against Dianne Feinstein. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Rep. Rashida Tlaib, Jumaane Williams, and Karen Bass, all of them really good progressives. Jumaane Williams is amazing. I am expecting big things from him in the future. And of course, I love Rashida Tlaib. Secretary of Transportation, more good progressives. Chuy Garcia, Ayanna Pressley, Sarah Nelson, who I've seen interviewed recently about COVID-19 layoffs. Anyway, you get the idea. You get the idea. Now, look, does this get anything done? Does it accomplish anything at all? Yes, it does. It puts forward a progressive vision and makes a strong argument for how to approach governing with a climate mandate as they have laid out. I mean, I think it's important to lay down these markers, you know, and part of putting out this vision for how we would like the cabinet to be, I would love for this to happen, okay, is so that when we see who the actual appointees are, people will understand where our criticisms are coming from, you know? Not that you get anything from the Washington, D.C. elite, from the Democratic elite. They don't care if you make a good point because they don't argue in good faith. So with that, folks, this daily is faded. Good night.